I just thought that drinking tea while doing a Ted Lasso video was ironically thematically appropriate.
Yeah, it's horrible. No, thank you.
Welcome to England.
And am I giving off any Keely vibes? I was trying to go for Keely vibes today. Hi! If you read the title, you already know exactly what this is about. The lovable, feel-good comedy Ted Lasso aired its series finale recently, and the internet immediately imploded over a ship. Except that it's deeper than just a ship. So what is this video for? For, I guess, historical documentation of the Great Tedbecca War of 2023. Because listen, finales going badly is a thing. When it happens to a show, it stays ingrained in the public consciousness forever. I've witnessed some interesting fandom meltdowns myself. I mean, my favorite show that I grew up with is Supernatural, and that finale caused quite the stir for a lot of reasons. The finale of BBC Sherlock still has shippers and non-shippers upset about it. How I Met Your Mother and Lost have a reputation for ending badly, though in Lost's case, it's not bad at all, and it's not the show's fault. Every single time that someone dislikes it, they say, oh, it's because they were dead all along, but they were not dead all along. And the show makes that explicitly clear in the finale, as well as it does answer all the questions and all the mysteries. So if you hate that one, then that's on you for not understanding it. But I digress. My point is that there's a bit of a pop culture phenomenon around rehashing finale controversies, whether deserved or not. And the fallout from the Ted Lasso finale was way bigger than expected. It went beyond a simple normal ship war and involved even the cast. It deserves to be documented, truly. I compiled some tweets too that I feel articulated both sides of the argument pretty well, and I'm gonna show them throughout the video. So what is the issue with the finale? Because there were other valid criticisms and compliments too, but we're not here to dissect the finale itself, just the fan response to Tedbecca specifically. Tedbecca, of course, is the ship of Ted and Rebecca, the main characters that seem to fit a lot of rom-com tropes. The ship became wildly popular on social media throughout the 3 seasons of the show, with people swearing up and down that they were meant to be together, while non-shippers swore that there was no chemistry between them beyond friendship. Some were downright antis. They took it strangely personally and found the mere possibility of the ship becoming canon offensive, while the shippers remained extremely dedicated. As it often goes with fandom, the shippers looked at what they considered to be evidence that the couple would eventually become canon, and in the end, they didn't. Spoilers for the finale from here on out. Ted leaves England to go back to the States and be with his son, and Rebecca ends up with another character that she'd met only once before, whose name we don't even know. Ted and Rebecca were not the great love story that many thought they were going to be. And maybe you're thinking, oh, so the meltdown is just frustrated shippers who didn't get their way. But no, that's too simplistic a view in this case. Because the writers didn't just not make Tedbecca canon, they played with the shippers by adding fakeouts where it looks like they were together, and that didn't go down well at all with the people who were already upset at their ship not becoming canon. They felt baited and strung along. Some fans even joked that this was straight baiting, a play on queer baiting, which is when a show keeps hinting at the possibility of a queer relationship when they already know they will never actually make the relationship happen. And then there were the interview comments to add even more fuel to the fire of an already delicate situation. But let's start from the beginning. In season 1, Ted and Rebecca developed a strong connection after he thawed her icy exterior with his kindness. They were both struggling with their personal lives when they met, and they shared a mutual understanding that they didn't really have with anybody else. They got through to each other in a way that nobody else did. It was very healing for both of them. They were always close with healthy communication and a bond that held on throughout season 2 as well. Different people started shipping them at different points. Some as early as in season 1, some by mid-season 2, some when they did the banter fakeout, where it looked like they were anonymously texting each other on a dating app. Some where she comforted him through a panic attack and stayed by his side, or when they ended up unintentionally spending Christmas Eve together. Non-shippers saw the same moments as pure friendship with no romantic undertones. And then the word soulmate started getting thrown around. As far as I can tell, the origins of this are Jason himself. Jason, who plays Ted and is one of the developers and executive producers of the show. On a cast interview with Go Derby in March 2021, he said he believed Ted and Rebecca are soulmates, and Hannah, who plays Rebecca, agreed. On another occasion, he said that the pair is wonderfully, soulfully, cosmically connected. Obviously, this threw the shippers into excitement. They felt validated and certain that the romantic hints they were picking up on were indeed leading up to something. Meanwhile, the non-shippers insisted that Ted and Rebecca were platonic soulmates and talked about the importance of men and women being allowed to be just close friends without bringing in romance. Both sides were making fair points. Jason's comment could indeed be taken either way. Fast forwarding to season 3, the penultimate episode left off with Ted saying that he had a truth bomb to tell Rebecca. Then the finale opens with him walking in her kitchen while she's having her morning tea, and they're both dressed like they were asleep. They're acting sheepish, and he asks if she wants to talk about it. It looks like they slept together, hinting that the truth bomb involved a declaration of love that led to them being in bed together. And then Coach walks in too, and it's revealed that it's all a fake out. Ted and Rebecca weren't together at all. Throughout the rest of the finale, after he says he's going back to Kansas to be with his son, she all but begs him to stay, offering to move his family there to England, while Ted remains silent and somewhat wooden. And in the end, they share a heartfelt goodbye and a teary hug at the airport. Ted goes home and Rebecca bumps into the Dutchman that she'd had romantic tension with early in the season. At first look, this ending isn't that bad if you're not rooting for the ship. You might have preferred that Ted stayed with the team and Rebecca had a love interest that we actually knew and cared more about. But it's not a terrible way to end it. It makes some sense, and some people even loved it. So why were other people so upset, beyond just the sadness of your ship not becoming canon? 3 reasons. The buildup seemed to make no sense for them now, the fake out, and later the dismissive cast comments. I guess we should question if there was an intentional buildup, or just shippers seeing what they wanted to see through shipping goggles. So let me bring up several key moments for Tedbecca. This Twitter thread really helped, as I honestly don't remember much of seasons 1 and 2, and I highly recommend you check the full thread out for yourself. Firstly, the very time that Ted brings her biscuits, it's framed like a proposal. The way he's positioned, the opening of the box, all make it look visually similar to opening a ring box. That's intentional. The choice of where to place characters, where to put cameras, which angles to shoot, and how to frame a scene are all taken into consideration when making TV shows and movies. It's no accident that one of the first moments Ted and Rebecca share, one that sets the tone for the entire relationship, is made to look like a proposal. Later on, through a conversation between Sam and his dad, the show introduces this idea of the universe sending you signs. And soulmates are typically understood as being cosmically connected, something Jason has said about Ted and Rebecca before, like I mentioned. On season 2, episode 5, there's that older couple in the stands that said she insisted I should stay, we fell in love, mirroring Rebecca telling Ted to stay back in season 2, and then now again in the finale. The audience knows them as confirmed soulmates since episode 210, when we find out that both of them had extremely significant events in their lives happen at the same time, all the way back in 1991. Like Jason said, Ted and Rebecca are established here to having been cosmically connected all along. There was an episode called Signs, dealing with the importance of picking up the signs that life gives you. A big thread in season 3 was the psychic prediction of Rebecca's love life, and the signs that were sprinkled in and had to do with it. One was a matchbox, and a matchbox is what the Green Army Man was originally called. The Army Man is something that Ted gave her all the way back in season 1 to keep her safe. And of course, later the Green Matchbook shows up in Ted's right as he's having to come to terms with his ex-wife dating someone new. This is objectively shows symbolism, whether you like the ship or not. If they removed the scene of Ted holding that matchbook, the story would be exactly the same. They chose to show it in the way that they did it, in the light that they did, for a reason. There were several references to soulmates in season 3 too, and always in the romantic sense, never platonic. These are just some of the many instances that led people to ship Tedbecca and be more or less convinced that they were going to be in game. A 2022 article on ScreenSpec titled Ted Lasso is a rom-com that reimagines love states that while the series isn't quite as explicit as it's been with other couples, like Roy and Keeley, the dynamic between Ted and Rebecca is a traditional slow burn. Less will they, won't they, and more when will they. They also have another article titled How Ted Lasso is Setting Up a 3-act rom-com between Ted and Rebecca. It takes an interesting look at how comedies and jokes are structured in 3 steps: setup, build anticipation, and punchline. And romantic comedies are also structured in 3 parts. The couple meets and their chemistry develops, then conflict throws a wedge between them, and then the conflict is resolved so the couple finds their way back to each other to be in love. The article moves on to breaking down how each season of Ted Lasso fits into each part of this rom-com structure. I think the ending is the crucial part to explain why so many people gravitate towards this ship. Should this turn out to be true, it will have been extremely brave of the show to space out a slow burn relationship across 3 years worth of buildup, separation, anticipation, intimacy, and love. And it will make the satisfaction of the ending all the sweeter. In an age of media that deems narratives of love between older characters unnecessary and recoils from female characters who are allowed the space to be strong and messy in their search for love, Ted Lasso offers us a new way forward. I'm definitely not bringing up these articles to try to convince anyone of the ship. I'm mentioning them because it's important to note that this wasn't just some crazy delusional fangirls on Twitter thing that were imagining things like some dismissively claim. The signs are overt enough to get think pieces written on websites focused on media analysis. There was something there that could be interpreted in a romantic way. It's totally alright to not interpret it like that, or to see the signs and still not want them together. But claiming the seeds were never sprinkled at all feels dishonest, when the show chose to add so many parallels and references. The aunties who are all over Twitter bragging that the shippers were delusional are being blind to breadcrumbs deliberately added into the show, just because they don't personally feel any chemistry between the leads, or they prefer a platonic friendship. And like the ones that are just so adamantly against the ship are so perplexing to me. They claim that it was because the real deep platonic bonds are rare on TV, so they prefer to have that over romance. But the constant cry of men and women can be just friends, Tedbecca ruins the show, always felt a little hollow. There are plenty of amazing platonic male-female bonds on Ted Lasso itself, as well as a myriad of other non-canon ships that never got such a visceral response from offended aunties. Also, part of the appeal for the shippers is that they started out as purely friends. In my experience, if people react so strongly negatively to a ship, it's more to do with their personal level of attraction towards one or both parties of any given ship. Or it's because it reminds them of something they went through in real life that bothers them. Plenty of level-headed people also said, I don't personally see the chemistry, and that's totally fair. It's the people claiming things like Tedbecca ending up together would be a perversion of the show that made me suspicious that deep down they have other reasons beyond men and women can be just friends. Of course men and women can be just friends. Nobody ever disputed that, I don't think. There are also the antis quick to say it's not sexual when typically nobody is even mentioning sex, but rather romance and love. Many shippers believed at points throughout the show that they were best friends then, but it would develop into romance later. So of course it's not sexual yet. It seems like the aunties instantly conflate a tender romance with sex. And because they personally don't see any sexual tension there, they get mad. They boil down the ship to something purely physical and assume that the shippers are the same way. While the shippers claim it's much more about their emotional and soulmate connection, and it's not about wanting them to hook up. It's way deeper than them being the male and female leads. And I don't entirely understand why shippers trivialize it as just wanting to see them have sex. And then there are complaints from them that the shippers are always insufferable, and there very well might be some there are. There usually are insufferable shippers in any ship. But I'll be honest that though I'm not a shipper myself, what I always saw were the aunties jumping in on shippers' tweets to be like, no, not this pairing, while the shippers were literally just doing their own thing and not bothering anybody. I saw way more tweets complaining about the shippers than actual shippers doing anything bad or outside of their own bubble of friends. I will say though, it can be very frustrating when shippers boil down an entire show with plenty of amazing characters and storylines to just their favorite ship. And there were some instances of some Tedbeccas doing that, overlooking everything else in favor of only discussing their ship. So sure, be frustrated, I totally get that. But I still saw way more of the aunties being unkind and fairly mean-spirited than I saw any shippers being annoying like they're accused of being. Actually, no, wait, there was one thing. Shippers who after the finale started saying, well, maybe Ted didn't deserve Rebecca anyways. He treated her just like Rupert. Like, what? That's so wrong. They had a very heartfelt goodbye at the airport. It's clear that they care about each other a lot, and Ted always respected her. Going home to his son, even if he and Rebecca are in love, is not abandoning her. They're adults. His main responsibility is his kid that he might not have wanted to uproot. And he and Rebecca can keep in touch, even in different countries. People do have to move away from their closest friends sometimes. And claiming that that's abandonment, in my opinion, is crossing into very unfair, slightly delusional territory too. So basically what I'm trying to get at is that both sides, shippers and non-shippers, have level-headed people making good arguments and being fair, but both sides also have people teetering on the unhinged line and maybe letting their emotions cloud any common sense. But anyway, why did so many liken Ted Lasso to a rom-com? Well, it's because they utilize similar tropes. The staples of the romantic comedy genre are serendipity bringing two unlikely people together, finding love in a hopeless place, and being a comforting thing for us to watch. Ted Lasso touches on all of that for pretty much all of their characters, be it in friendship or in romance. Nora Ephron is a writer and filmmaker mostly known for hugely popular romantic comedies. In 2020, Jason described the show by saying, "What if Nora Ephron wrote a sports comedy?" So very heavily implying that that's what Ted Lasso is, a sports comedy that is also a Nora-esque rom-com. There are plenty of references to rom-coms throughout the show, some of them Nora's. What's interesting is that in all, or pretty much all of her rom-coms, the protagonists become best friends before they fall in love. Best friends? Like Ted and Rebecca. The most notable reference is in season 3, when Ted says that Sleepless in Seattle is the superior movie. A movie where the couple only unites as a couple seconds before the credits roll. Fueled with all the other little hints and the soulmate comments, this led the shippers to believe even more strongly that the ending would make Tedbecca canon, possibly at the very last moment to mirror the rom-coms that they purposely aligned themselves with. So, given all of that, the connections, the breadcrumbs, the rom-com stuff, people were confused as to what it all meant when the show ended without a romantic resolution to any of it. This question got floated around a lot in all sorts of variations. If Tedbecca were only ever intended as platonic soulmates, why write so many romantic tropes and scenes for them? Isn't that pointless? A lot of people answered these with, oh, because they're platonic soulmates, but that's not an answer. The question isn't, why do they get along so well? Oh, because they're platonic soulmates. The question is, why add romantic undertones for two characters if they're just platonic? The question itself already accounts for them being platonic. So honestly, all the people preaching because they were always just friends are either misreading the question or missing the entire point. In my opinion, there are two possible answers for this, or a combo of the two. The first is, a TV show is a product. It's art, yes, and sometimes the people making it care for it deeply, but ultimately it's all a business. If they know there's a section of the fandom that is very big and super dedicated, they will not alienate this fan base before the finale. And more often than not, for a lot of shows, they will bait them in some way. So in this case, and this is hypothetical, but they could have seen the interest that people took in Tedbecca and decided to sprinkle in more hints, more rom-com references, all to keep the shippers invested, keep them talking about the show and watching constantly to pick up on more hints and then indirectly promoting it by talking about it so much. It didn't matter that they never intended to make the ship canon, they just needed to keep the audience wondering long enough, and they just needed to keep them hoping to string them along until the finale. The second possibility is the subversion of the trope. Ted Lasso is a show that played with several sitcom tropes, only to subvert them later on. Co-creator Brandon, who also plays Coach, stated in 2020 that the goal of the show was to do the sports movie thing but subvert some of the tropes. The subversion is often gentle though, giving the characters the time to grow naturally. Much of their growth, like the other people's growths, come from Ted's unrelenting kindness and support and empathy. Like Rebecca hiring Ted for revenge, Jamie's egotistic personality in season 1, Nate's shift to the rival team. All of these are tropes seen in other sports movies. The show leans into them, gives them time to play out without stereotypes, treating the characters as humans instead of stereotypical characters, and then resolves them, the tropes, in a way that subverts them. You could say they did that to Tedbecca. They leaned into the rom-com tropes for them, gave the relationship time to play out without making a cliche version of it, then in the end resolved it by subverting it. The rom-com couple does not actually end up together. I do think that there's something interesting in that, a unique take if you will, but the problem is that it vastly underestimates the emotional attachment that people have and develop when it comes to the ships that they love. It's one thing for Rebecca to realize that her revenge plot was bad and become friends with Ted, or for Jamie to become a true team player and for Nate to be redeemed, and it's another to dangle a beautiful romance and then yank it away from people. And again, if you don't think that the show ever dangled a romance, that's fair enough, but with all the stuff that we discussed earlier, I hope that you can start to recognize why other people saw it as a potential romance. So by the end, they felt that all of the development was utterly pointless since it wasn't leading up to anything. I would personally say that it wasn't pointless if the intention was subversion though, because the subversion itself would be the point, and the romantic buildup is necessary for the subversion to take place. And maybe the situation would have wrapped up there and it would have ended like that. Sadness over a non-canon ship, some confusion over why it all happened, and that's it. But then the finale chose to do that kitchen fake out, and to put it simply, it hurt people. We already discussed what the fake out was, and the fan reactions to it were mixed. Overall, Tedbecca's shippers thought that it was unnecessarily cruel to give them hope only to yank it away. They felt made fun of. Even non-shippers agreed that while they're glad that the ship isn't canon, they thought that playing with the shippers was mean-spirited, and it twisted the knife a bit too much. Other non-shippers who were more against the ship rather than just not personally shipping it seemed gleeful to have been right about it, and they found the scene funny. I'll just say this. If people are sincerely upset about something, which they are about this, then gloating and finding their hurt feelings funny is mean-spirited. It doesn't matter if you don't think that they should be so upset about a ship. What matters is that they are. This is not the kindness that the show preaches about at all. Now, I think that the fake out might have been intended as harmless. People who work on a TV show, be it the cast or the writers, can be a little out of touch with the fan base. Even the ones that have a strong online presence can underestimate the level of emotional attachment that people have when it comes to fictional things. So maybe they didn't mean the fake out to be cruel. Maybe they just knew about the Tedbecca shippers, which they did, we know they did, and thought it would be funny to do a more overt subverting of that trope. They wanted us to wonder if Ted and Rebecca slept together, just to turn it into something else like, ha, see how clever we are? I can't say whether they intended to mock the shipper fanbase or not. I'd like to believe that they didn't and they just miscalculated. What I can say is reiterate that it did not go down well at all. Regardless of the show's intentions, dedicated fans felt mocked, felt that the showrunners were laughing at them, thinking them silly for having hopes in Tedbecca, even though their hope was a direct response to things put on the show on purpose. Let this be a lesson to future showrunners. If you have a large shipper fanbase watching your show, don't trick them in the finale. Don't give them hope just to yank it away. They will feel hurt even if you don't intend to hurt them, and it might affect how they consume your projects in the future. If the writers and producers didn't know that Tedbeccas were so invested, they sure as hell do now. Let's finally talk about the cast response to all of the finale discourse, as that didn't help matters at all. The finale aired on May 31st. Prior to that, Hannah called the ship pedestrian in an interview. Pedestrian as in dull, uninventive. That felt insulting to many fans, and I can understand why. Saying that viewing Tedbecca in a romantic life is uninventive makes it sound like the people interpreting them like that are also uninventive, which is at best a thoughtless way to phrase it. It puts the blame on the people, like, oh, you interpreted it in the lesser way, even though, again, these people were only reacting to things weaved into the narrative. Then on June 1st, I believe, Brendan did an Ask Me Anything on Reddit post-finale, and he ruffled some feathers too. He said that they never considered Tedbecca endgame with any enthusiasm, only out of professional responsibility, meaning they knew many fans wanted it, but they were unenthusiastic about making it canon. This might might not have gone over so poorly if not for the fakeout scene. The remark made the fakeout feel like an even more intentional taunt. I've never seen such disrespect with a fandom, one person claimed. Brandon also answered the question about whether he was surprised by how many people shipped Tedbecca by saying that we've been taught that female and male leads end up together and that's hard conditioning to see past. Basically saying that people only shipped them because they're conditioned to automatically expect romance from male and female leads. That is condescending. Like, I'm sorry, but it is condescending. As many people pointed out, calling a fan base conditioned when, again, for the millionth time, there were hints in the narrative feels wrong. It unfairly shifts the blame onto fan interpretation rather than taking responsibility and accountability for the stuff that they put into their own show. In response, many fans stated that they did not start out expecting to ship Tedbecca and only did so later on, after certain specific scenes convinced them. So conditioning doesn't hold any water either, because they did not start out shipping them, conditioned to do so. But more than leaving fans insulted, Hannah and Brandon also confused people with seemingly contradicting statements. After the finale, Hannah said that she thinks Ted and Rebecca have chemistry beyond friendship. What is chemistry beyond friendship if not romantic chemistry? But wasn't that the pedestrian interpretation of their relationship? But now she's saying that she thinks it's there? It's confusing, right? Maybe she did change her mind along the way, or she wanted to be more diplomatic this time around. And Brandon in the AMA said that he thinks in the airport scene, both Ted and Rebecca were struggling with whether or not to say I love you, but knew instinctively that if they did, it could open a floodgate that they'd rather not open. Now, friends say I love you, obviously. Friends should say I love you to each other. But saying I love you as you say goodbye to a best friend in an airport would open which floodgate exactly? It kind of sounds like the romantic I love you that would open the floodgates of them having to acknowledge that they're in love but about to separate anyways. So for a group of shippers already struggling with the finale, all of this felt like mixed signals. And then a day later you have Jason blocking a bunch of fans on Twitter. I only heard about this, I didn't see it myself. Some people said that he was blocking any negative commentary about the finale. Some said that he was blocking insulting tweets only. It's safe to say that if you were attacking him, insulting him, telling him to go F himself, you're 1000% in the wrong, and he's absolutely more than justified in blocking you. Don't do this kind of thing. It's awful and it should go without saying. All of these actors and producers are human beings. Attacking them is never okay and never justifiable, no matter how upset you are by the finale or how disappointed you are with their remarks. Just be kind. And if Jason was blocking innocuous criticism too, well, then he might benefit in learning how to handle it better. But sometimes when we care a lot about something, we take criticism personally, and we just don't want other people's opinions clouding the way. You know, fair enough if that's what happened to him. It's his Twitter, he can block whoever he wants. And we gotta remember that these are all human beings doing their best, and none of these comments make them bad people. In a more recent interview, Nick, who played Nate, said that one of his first questions about the ending was if Rebecca and Ted would get together. The interviewer asked if he was Team Tedbecca then, and he said, "Of course I was. Yeah, of course I was."
My first question, the only thing I wanted to know was whether Ted and Rebecca got together at the end.
Were you Team Tedbecca?
Of course I was, yeah, of course I was. But he was like, of course they don't. And I was like, oh.
But Nick also said he knew for ages that Tedbecca wouldn't happen because he was told so when he asked. Which means that the writers knew all along, and all of the fake-outs were indeed deliberate. And that did make people feel like they were being strung along on purpose even more, because it's not like the writers were maybe considering it, they already knew they weren't gonna do it. And then, plot twist, with the new Hannah interview with Inside the Film Room came on June 11th. On this interview, she says that there were times where she thought that Tedbecca would be endgame. She would get scripts and wonder if they were going in a romantic direction. She mentions that Jason was always firm about them being platonic. So I think she tried to respect his point of view in past interviews. But now that she's free to speak her mind, she even said this about shippers.
Anybody who has been wanting that is a lover of hope and positivity, and you know, there is a beauty in that in itself. I understand why people would think that.
This is all quite a different tune than calling the ship pedestrian. I think she saw that people were upset about that, and she tried to rectify the situation. Not that I think that she's lying or being fake now, that's not what I mean. I think she simply listened to a different perspective and admitted that she thought about Tedbecca herself. She actually even addressed the pedestrian comment in a press event on June 10th, I believe, where she clarified that what she meant was that the relationship between Rebecca and Ted is very deep. It's a depth of love and companionship that's not purely sexual. She specifically didn't say that it's not sexual at all or that it's platonic. She said it's deeper than just sex. And honestly, that's what any healthy, true love romantic relationship should be. So now, even the shippers are divided. Some believe that she always saw the potential romance and kept quiet out of respect for Jason. And some think that she is still boiling down a beautiful love to shippers want to see them bang. We can't know how she truly feels, of course, but at least she's validating people who saw the potential romance by saying that she saw it too. And she's validating Team Platonic in a way too at the same time. It's important to note, though, that if a certain portion of the cast is interpreting the relationship in a particular way, if they are seeing it as a romantic possibility, then it's definitely not just shippers being crazy shippers. It means that there is actually something in the writing that is making people interpret it that way. It is leading the interpretation in that direction. Very often, actors will lean into what they think is being portrayed in the script. If Hannah in particular thought that there was a possibility of a Tedbecca endgame, it's likely that she played her part with deliberate ambiguity to help leave the door open to that. It's her job to do that because actors don't know what's going to happen in the future, so they kind of have to play with what they're seeing in that moment in that script. And they let her do it. They, the showrunners, seem to have kept that ambiguity on purpose because they could have told her to act in a different way if they wanted to. Again, maybe it was because they wanted to build that up to then subvert the trope at the end, or maybe they clung to an original ending that was the initial intention but didn't make as much sense anymore after the character's development. But regardless of the case, I think it's fair to say that the shippers were for sure justified in seeing potential romance there. To claim otherwise feels extremely disingenuous when there is so much evidence mounting. It's just crazy and kind of sad that for a show that was so comforting, so feel good for so many people, the finale caused a fandom implosion. It caused spite from both sides, hurt feelings, and controversy. And what about me? Maybe you'd like to know just to gauge my objectivity or something. I love the show. It's one of my favorite comedies. And as for the ship, I've kind of always been in the middle with Tedbecca. I didn't catch all of the romantic parallels and references, but I felt some chemistry. So for me, they could have gone either way, romantic or platonic soulmates. What I think the show did wrong was play with and potentially underestimate the shippers. That I do agree with. You never want your audience to think that you're demeaning them, making them feel crazy for picking up hints that you chose to write into a narrative. But they were not obligated to make the ship endgame either. If they wanted to subvert it, that's totally fair enough. It just could have been done in a more tactful way, especially with the cast remarks and without that fake out. Finally, we need to touch on the season 4 truthers. When BBC Sherlock ended, there was a theory that one extra final episode was coming. People picked up on what they thought were Easter eggs and assumed the premiere of a new show was actually going to be the real Sherlock finale. Some Supernatural fans had the theory that the penultimate episode was going to be somewhat fake, a trick played by the villainous deity, and the actual finale would reveal that many things from the penultimate episode would be undone. Safe to say, both of these finale theorists were wrong. Just like other infamous finales that displeased a portion of the fandom, some people have convinced themselves, either for real or as just kind of a joke, that there will be more Ted Lasso in the future. The theory seems to stem from the fact that Ted looks unhappy in the final shot of the series, and that many of the storylines set up throughout season 3 felt unfinished, or finished in a way that didn't do justice to what the characters deserved. So they think there's more to be said and shown, like Ted realizing that he's not happy in Kansas, and that his son can be happy in England with him. After all, the boy literally said that all that he would miss from Kansas were his toys. I think the hint that Keely and Rebecca are going to be getting a women's football team also made people think that a new season or a spin-off is coming. I think, if anything, a spin-off is much more likely because it does not look like Jason would be coming back as Ted at all. Instead of season 4, some are Christmas special truthers instead, claiming that there will be one more episode, a final Christmas special that will clear up the finale issues. Again, many of these issues have nothing to do with Tedbecca. It's once again a bit disingenuous to act like shippers are brats who just didn't get their way when there's valid criticism about other parts of the finale being made. Anyways, this Christmas theory came from several places. One, from the fact that Christmas specials are a British tradition. So people are saying it would be like Ted embracing one more part of their culture. It would be kind of meta, you know? 2, Jane was wearing a Christmas blazer for apparently no reason. 3, the little girl's name apparently means Christmas tree. These could be taken as Easter eggy hints. 4, there were spoilers leaked during the filming of the show that said an episode was shot in the snow. On 3 separate locations, no less. There was obviously no snowy episode on season 3 at all, so does that mean that it's a missing episode? An extra episode that is already filmed? There's also some footage of a Champions League ticket, and that didn't factor into the season either. It's something that could only come after the game that they played in the finale. I have to say, that is quite a lot of unused footage to just be something that they decided to delete along the way. 5, Jason has talked about characters from the original The Office, the UK version, Tim and Dawn. They're apparently the will they won't they couple in that show, with their workplace romance nearly happening several times but always getting interrupted. Jason even named a Ted Lasso player after Tim. Well, in the finale of The Office, Dawn leaves London and moves to Florida, and the couple never gets together. You can see the obvious parallels to Tedbecca, right? Then, like a year after The Office UK finale, they dropped 2 Christmas specials, and Tim and Dawn finally had a realization moment. They kissed and they got together at the end of it. That makes some Tedbecca fans hypothesize that Ted Lasso will do the same thing, since Jason has mentioned and referenced that specific couple. And Tedbecca aside, some just want this special so that Ted can come back to Richmond, because him being isolated from all of his friends is not an ending that many people, myself included, really wanted. And 6, Hannah is filming her own singing Christmas special with Apple TV, so that's an easy tie-in with a similar Ted Lasso special. So sure, there's definitely evidence that you can make fit with the Christmas special theory. It's not a theory that's totally born out of thin air. But the thing is, the showrunners seemed pretty pleased with what they created. So honestly, I think it's unrealistic of fans to expect that a Christmas special will be created to fix the finale, because the showrunners, they don't believe that it needs fixing. They like it. But fans believing that after a finale there's still more content to come is an age-old tradition, so it had to be documented here too. And I have to admit, the missing snow scenes are a bit odd. So where does this leave us? At a possibly ongoing conclusion, because this great war might keep unfolding for some time still. If you're hurt by the finale, I'm sincerely so sorry, and I hope you can find solace in rewatching or in fanfic. If you liked the finale, I am genuinely happy for you. Just please don't rub salt in the wound for other people. I hope you all enjoyed this video. It was another last minute idea that I scrambled to put together. I'm still working on a few full-length deep dives of other shows, so if you'd like to see more, please subscribe, leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and mwah!